Good morning, everybody. This is Diggs. It's another beautiful day out here in the Pacific Northwest, and today we're going to be talking about snow. We're going to be talking about him in relation to the Agrias adjustments that have also come out on JP. He's an interesting unit, but I don't think he's going to be really meta-defining or transformative to the game in any particular way. We're going to talk about why, so let's go ahead and dig in. So Snow is a really interesting unit, and there are some significant differences between him and Agrius that are really, I would say, important to consider. But I think overall you're going to find Agrius is going to bring more utility to the party. Probably one of the first big differences with Snow is that Snow actually can't equip armor. He's going to kind of be locked between wearing hat, clothes, and accessories, which is definitely going to be a bit of a detriment to him. Another interesting thing is, he has increased chance of being targeted in his mastery ability. He gets an additional HP 5%, but the mastery that Agrius gets is so much better than Snow. Like if we just hop over there, right? Snow gets his standard ice buff. He gets HP 5%, increased chance of being targeted. Agrius has freaking single target resistance 20 for self in her kit, and she has spirit plus 15 for her mastery. So right out of the gate, Snow is already behind in terms of ice tanking capability because he doesn't have this kind of power up from his mastery. His TMR is interesting. It's also not going to be very relevant, I don't think, unless you're running an ice composition. I do want to point it out though, because it is the first unique TMR of this type, which is very similar to Velus's haste buffing, where Velus casts haste on a unit and then he also casts haste on himself. With this TMR, you cast an accuracy and ice attack buff on an ally. So it's accuracy plus 30, ice attack plus 25, and it gives yourself accuracy plus 30 and ice attack plus 25, which I think is really cool. It has really good range. It definitely has some utility potentially, and it is a large chunk of accuracy. So I'm really interested to see what type of TMRs similar to this are released in the future. When we're looking at stats, Snow is also going to be leaning very heavily on defense and very heavily towards slash and pierce resistance. Now, he does have some missile resistance, but he is weak to magic. Now, we don't see a ton of magic users really coming that we're going to have to, really worry about. I do wonder though about Summer Black Rose Helena, if she's going to come out on the global side and be a really dominant force to be reckoned with. We are hearing from kind of the JP side currently that missile is very relevant with both cloud and lightning, kind of teaming up. So I do think, him having access to defense and missile slash pierce and slash resistance is really good. But the problem is he's leaning very heavily on defense as a unit. And so many units can either hit 100% defense penetration or, they come standard basically with 50% defense penetration nowadays, that I just don't see, defense going to be enough to really keep him alive. He comes with agility 64, which I kind of would have hoped he had more agility, because candidly, Agrias, if you take a look at her stats, comes in at agility 63. So, I mean, she has very comparable agility. She has 25 spirit and 6 defense, whereas Snow only had 18 defense and no spirit. She has more HP than him, coming in at 5274. They, of course, have different resistances. Snow can resist confusion, which may be relevant if you're going up against, Agrius's, but I don't think you're going to be going up against enemies that are confusing you all the time. Where Agrius really does suffer compared to Snow is going to be like slash resistance, pierce resistance, striking resistance, and she's going to have significantly more magical resistance. So she's going to have 20% magic resistance, 5% striking, and 5% slash, and she's weak 10% to pierce. But again, I mean, who's running around with pierce units nowadays? I can't think of anyone. Maybe Oberon occasionally. But it just seems like, out the gate, Snow is far behind, and he just continues to kind of fall even further behind. Taking a look at his skills here, he does have some interesting skills, and I think it's interesting to consider how some of these might be used. Of course, you're going to want to almost universally always have set his tanking skills, so HP 12%, defense 12, increased chance of being targeted 5. Pugilist sub is going to have accuracy up 20 for self, which I think most people would argue you probably have to set. You can also set Shadow Runner, which is going to give agility 12%, luck 12%. Shikuchi, movement 1, jump 1. There's so many passives you can set on him that, I think you're always going to have good passives. But one thing that's really notable here for me, there's no defense penetration. You're not seeing a passive that is going to do, a variety of things, kind of like, no decreased AP consumption, no increased movement, coinciding with, like if they had maybe combined Shikuchi with potentially his ability to have, be targeted in defense 12 and HP 12%, that would probably be a little bit more appropriate since he's a very short range unit. And then we get to his counters, and his counters are even more disappointing because all of his counters are point blank counters. There's not a single counter that is not, except for the ninja counter, which is the ninja counter. And I even think the ninja counter is point blank here. But the only difference between this and the pugilist counter is that it increases damage as HP decreases. I mean, there's nothing remarkable about that. That's not going to save him. That's not going to be, a paladin guard or a sword guard proccing, right? You would think he would have some type of very powerful defensive capability here, and he just doesn't. It doesn't appear like show up in his counter, whereas Agrias has access to multiple versions of defensive, counter abilities. So, they want him to be this tank / brawler, but he's not really like he kind of has the worst of what brawlers have, and he has the worst of what tanks have, basically. Like, he doesn't have the best of either world, and it just kind of, it takes him to struggle. Like, it makes him struggle. And taking a look at his main job abilities, it gets even worse. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this. And I think the primary reason is that he doesn't have any range in his kit. His highest range ability is going to be 3 spaces away. And that 3 spaces away ability is only if you're using a cross-shaped attack to hit that, or if you're using something in his secondary kit. His main attack is basically 2 spaces away. It increases Wind Killer, which, I mean, great. It gives you Wind Killer. It's probably going to be really good in some PvE situations. His primary buff, it looks like his buffs have been split up. So his primary buff gives defense 20, spirit 20, and defense debuff resistance 100. This would be really good if defense debuff resistance stopped defense penetration, which it doesn't. So you're already going to be going up against enemies that have huge boatloads of defense penetration nowadays. And I would have expected to see something like maybe to mitigate that. Very similar to how Ramza has, I believe it's Ramza, that has the capability to lower defense penetration of the opponents. He has Guts, but it's separate from any of his other buffs. I would have loved to see Guts tied into either of his buffs. Like, I think having Guts be separate is a really bad idea, and it's really to his detriment. And then his job level 25 buff, which is arguably his best, which gives him strike attack 25, AoE resistance 20, and then it recovers his own HP when it is less than 20% for self. For those that aren't familiar, this is what Leela has, which is really powerful. I would have really liked to see this tied in with Guts. Like, I really would have liked to see this, just kind of powered in there, because he's going to have so many buffs to try and get off. He's not going to be able to use a TMR ability. He's just going to be in one of these situations where, you're probably going to turn off everything except for Guts and his job level 25. And even with the combination of both those things, I don't think he'll be enough. His upgraded ability dispels all buffs on the target, dispels haste, and I'm guessing this is physical damage barrier and magic damage barrier, or it's protect and shell. I'm not quite sure. He does have one ability which gives him defense penetration 40, but that's pretty much it. His cap on damage is really, prevalent because he doesn't have any defense penetration. He doesn't have any penetration at all except for that buff, and that buff procs at the end of his ability. So, most of the time, like, this initial attack, isn't even going to have the defense penetration 40 that, he's going to need desperately. So, There's definitely some problems in his kit. In his secondary abilities, he has like a 2-hit pummel ability, which is interesting. He does have decreased single target resistance 30, which is okay, but I mean, yeah, like, here's the problem, right? Ice Slash is already so good. You would need him to have access to an Ice Slash to be viable in a composition, and he does have access to Shadow Bind, but you're going to want him for that decreased single target resistance. Otherwise, he's going to be almost useless in a PvE capacity. So there's so many things wrong with his kit. There's so many conflicting things. Like, I have talked multiple times about how really, like, you know, what we needed was a strong Ice Fist user to kind of universalize ice striking, because so many units have access to sub striking in ice, and Snow is not it. He, like, all he needed was like abilities that Tifa had, right? Like, if he had closing the gap abilities, that would completely change my opinion on him. Like, if he was able to close the gap, use his abilities efficiently, you know, kind of have a single buff that's universally powerful for himself, I think he would be good. But he doesn't have, you know, Dream Within a Dream from Sub Ninja. His LB is a 1-hit, you know, 3 range, 49 AP, 67% chance to stun. Like, that's really powerful, but I just don't see it happening for him, you know, especially when we have Agrias coming out. And just looking at Agrias's skills, right? Her main ability, which lands stop on the opponent, is going to have the capability to dispel auto revive for targets. It has a plus 30% hit chance, and it can land stop. Like, holy Jesus, that is so powerful. You know, and take into the fact that her job level 25 breaks barrier, breaks protect, is an ice slash, it has range, she has decreased AP consumption and agility up on her increased chance of being targeted, in addition to her spirit 12. Like, I just don't see a world where Snow is considered like significantly better of a tank than Agrias, because Agrias comes with relevant offensive capability, and I think she's just gonna stomp Snow. Like, I'm very let down by Snow, and even Snow's gear, right? Like, if we take a look at his equipment here, gives AoE resistance 10 for 3 turns and strike attack 15. That's nothing. His VC, defense 3, attack 158, HP 340, gives him single hit resistance 10, HP 5%. Like, you're still behind on single hit resistance from what Agrias has. Like, not to mention it gives ice units defense penetration 25, which is pretty powerful, and ice attack up 18, but then it gives wind resistance 20. Like, nobody is dying for ice units to have more wind resistance. So it's just I feel like Snow is a disaster. Lightning came in hot, came in powerful, came in awesome, and then Snow just like crashed on the ground and is like burning in a motorcycle fire right now. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and I will catch you guys next time.